1. For the relationship between the servlet container and the Servlet API. Sun Servlet specification provides a standard and a platform-independent framework for communication between servlets and their containers. This framework is made up of a set of Java interfaces and classes. These interfaces and classes are collectively called the Servlet Application Programming Interfaces, or the Servlet API. Simply put, we develop servlets using this API, which is implemented by the Servlet container. See Figure 1. 5. Figure 1. 5 servlets interact with the Servlet container through the Servlet API. The Servlet API is all we as Servlet developers need to know. Since all the Servlet containers must provide this API, the servlets are truly platform and Servlet container independent. Essentially, understanding the rules of this API and the functionality that it provides is what servlet programming is all about. The Servlet API is divided into two packages: javax.servlet and javax.servlet.HTTP. We will discuss these packages in more detail as we progress through the book, but for now, let's take a quick look at them. 1. 1. The javax.servlet package. This package contains the generic servlet interfaces and classes that are independent of any protocol. The javax.servlet.Servlet interface. This is a central interface in the Servlet API. Every servlet class must directly or indirectly implement this interface. It has 5 methods, as shown in Table 1. 1. Table 1. 1 methods of the javax.servlet.Servlet interface. This method is called by the Servlet container to indicate to the servlet that it must initialize itself and get ready for service. The container passes an object of type servletConfig as a parameter. Service. This method is called by the Servlet container for each request from the client to allow the servlet to respond to the request. Destroy. This method is called by the Servlet container to indicate to the servlet that it must clean up itself, release any required resources, and get ready to go out of service. GetServletConfig returns information about the servlet, such as a parameter to the init method. GetServletInfo. The implementation class must return information about the servlet, such as the author, the version, and copyright information. The service method handles requests and creates responses. The Servlet container automatically calls this method when it gets any request for the servlet. The complete signature of this method is public void service servlet request, servlet response throws servlet exception, Java. Exception. The javax.servlet generic servlet class. The generic servlet class implements the servlet interface. It is an abstract class that provides implementation for all the methods except the service method of the servlet interface. It also adds a few methods to support logging. We can extend this class and implement the service method to write any kind of servlet. The javax.servlet request interface. The servlet request interface provides a generic view of the request that was sent by a client. It defines methods that extract information from the request. The javax.servlet.ServletResponse interface. The Servlet response interface provides a generic way of sending responses. It defines methods that assist in sending a proper response to the client. 1. 2. The javax.servlet.HTTP package. This package provides the basic functionality required for HTTP servlets. Interfaces and classes in this package extend the corresponding interfaces and classes of the javax.Servlet package to build support for the HTTP protocol. The javax.servlet.HTTP HTTP Servlet class. HTTP Servlet is an abstract class that extends generic servlet. It adds a new service method with this signature. Protected void service HTTP servlet request, HTTP servlet response throws servlet exception, Java. Exception. In the Hello World example, we extended our servlet class from this class and we overrode the service method. The javax.servlet http servlet request interface. The HTTP servlet request interface extends servlet request and provides an HTTP specific view of the request. It defines methods that extract information, such as HTTP headers and cookies, from the request. The javax.servlet http Servlet response interface. The HTTP Servlet response interface extends Servlet response and provides an HTTP-specific way of sending responses. It defines methods that assist in setting information, such as HTTP headers and cookies, into the response. 1. 4. 3 advantages and disadvantages of the Servlet API. The advantages of the Servlet API are as follows. Flexibility. Each time we need to add new functionality to the server, all we have to do is write a new servlet specific to that set of requirements and plug it into the server, without modifying the server itself. Separation of responsibilities. The main server now only needs to worry about the network connections and communications part. The job of interpreting requests and creating appropriate responses is delegated to the servlets. It's Java. Java programmers don't need to learn a new scripting language. Also, they can use all the object-oriented features provided by Java. Portability. We can develop and test a servlet in one container and deploy it in another. Unlike proprietary solutions, the Servlet API is independent of web servers and servlet containers. We can write once, run anywhere, as long as the containers support the standard Servlet API. One obvious limitation, or rather restriction, of the Servlet API is one that is common to all kinds of frameworks. You have to stick to the rules set forth by the framework. This means we have to follow certain conventions to make the servlet container happy. Another disadvantage involves the containers available in the market and not the Servlet API itself. Theoretically, using the API, you can write servlets for almost any kind of protocol, including FTP, SMTP, or even proprietary protocols. Nevertheless, it would not be fair to expect the servlet container providers to build support for all of them. As of now, the servlet specification mandates support only for HTTP through the javax.servlet HTTP package. 1.5 Summary. In this chapter, we learned about the basics of servlets and the servlet container, and how they provide extensions to a server's functionality. We also ran a sample Hello World servlet that displayed a line of text in the browser window. Finally, we looked at the Servlet API and its classes and interfaces. Armed with this knowledge, we can now answer the question, what is a servlet? From several different perspectives. Conceptually, a servlet is a piece of code that can be plugged into an existing server to extend the server functionality, used to generate the desired output dynamically. For a servlet container, a servlet is a Java class like any other normal Java class, a class that implements the javax.servlet interface. For a web component developer, a servlet, or specifically an HTTP servlet, is a class that extends javax.servlet http servlet, resides in a servlet container such as Tomcat or JRUN, serves HTTP requests,